Altan, co-founder and CEO of MoreMarkets. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you guys are doing something quite interesting. It's something I've heard before, or people have talked about. This, idle assets from other chains and other, in the top, 50 of coin market cap, but they don't participate in DeFi. And so I'm really glad to see that that's kind of what your guys are focused on at MoreMarkets. Before we get into it, tell us about your journey in crypto. You were an engineer at Near, I believe. Maybe tell us a little bit about that and what led to you leaving to to create MoreMarkets.
Yeah, as you said, I'm Altan, one of the founders of MoreMarkets. Maybe I'll start with how I came to crypto. I grew up in Turkey, and that's why the name is different, and you don't see it as much. Turkey is interesting.
There's a ton of crypto in Turkey. I've interviewed lots of
Yeah.
founders from there. Orkun from Citria.
Yeah, that's correct.
Many
Yeah,
others.
that's good. Yeah, I know Orkun and Emin, AVAX founder, is also Turkish. She was a professor at Cornell.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to the story, when you're growing up in Turkey, there's certain things you see, and one of the most important things is Turkish lira devalued a lot. So when I was growing up in 2009, $1 was something around like 118 or 119 Turkish lira. And then when you look at the graph, you see that it's like full on drop, right? So a lot of people look into different ways to store wealth. Obviously, this is gold, right? When you talk to your grandparents, your mom, your dad, gold is something that is everybody wants to buy. And even kind of funny that when you go to weddings, you buy gold for people. So you go to a merchant and you can buy gold. And Bitcoin just started to, when I looked at Bitcoin when I was in high school, this is like, wow, this is interesting. So it could be something like that. So that's my background. I studied computer science and mathematics in the United States, actually. I did my master's in AI at Imperial College London, and started at Near after being I won a hackathon in 2022, and Near team reached out to me and said, you should come to the foundation team and be a partner engineer. So partner engineer means you are the one, you can code, obviously, but you should also go and talk about the product and tell people about the technology in a more simplistic way so the business development team can quote unquote sell the product. So that was my journey to Near. And what we did at Near was we were building this technology called data availability, which is a basic smart contract that any rollups can sort of send data to. And we were a really good team. We really liked each other. And that's why we decided to sort of I personally decided to, hey, I should start a company. And we started to spin off with that team. So we were 4 people leaving Near, and then now we're 9 to 10 people. So yeah.
Are you guys, is MoreMarkets, is data availability still one of the key, I guess the key primitives you guys are building with MoreMarkets, or has that changed or pivoted?
Yeah, it's changed. I talk about pivots quite often, and I talked about this with a friend. We pivoted because, and it's really hard to do pivots in crypto when you come up with a narrative. But when we looked into it, the infrastructure and data availability doesn't generate any revenue, although it's a great piece of tech that we created on Near. So we were like, rather, looked at top 20 assets and said, hey, like it's a very large market. Just thinking from fundamentals, and even if you can unlock like 1% as a protocol, you're capturing a lot of value. So that was the kind of thinking around it. But it was the original team that built DA, but spin out to do something else.
What's your view on DA and other chains? Eigenlayer is doing something in the space, and of course Celestia. And there's a lot of debate on whether or not it will actually capture any value, since based on current data, there's a lot of usage of DA, but not a lot of revenue. And apparently, that's the revenue toggle. They can just turn that on and earn more, but then really nobody knows if usage will go down if price goes up or cost goes up. Well, what's your view on DA in general as a category?
It's a commodity. It's kind of like railroads, and I almost view it as kind of bridges. You know,
Hmm.
they exist between different chains, and you know you can. But the fees are trending to zero because there's always a new project that can come in and say, "I'm going to offer for a cheaper price," right? So then you get into a competition between different chains and almost driving to zero. Um, that was the main sort of thinking around pivoting, actually, because it's you can build a good product. We had like a couple of different roll-ups using us, but it's really hard to generate revenue. And when you look at the quote unquote fundamental season, it's not one of those projects that will shine. Predominantly, DeFi has been sort of leading the way with revenue generation and protocols.
Let's get into MoreMarkets. Tell us your thesis, how you guys came up with the kind of the key insight that led to building more thesis or
Yeah,
more markets. Sorry, MoreMarkets.
yeah. I mean, it could be a more thesis too because it's more. But I'm an engineer, so we come from fundamental thinking. So we looked at almost like top 20 assets and looked at Bitcoin, looked at XRP, looked at Doge, and really when you start to look into the numbers, um, on-chain DeFi and usage of these assets are pretty minimal. Um, and this started with, I guess, with Bitcoin, BTC Fi. I know you talked to Citria folks. Um, so the usage, if you look at Bitcoin, almost like TVL divided by market cap is barely 1%. And when you look at XRP and Doge, XRP is like 0.05%. And these assets have like large holder bases. They are, you know, Bitcoin has its own holder base. XRP has its army that's quite different. And Doge has, you know, people that actually hold them, but they either use them on centralized exchanges, so they just hold them on centralized exchanges, or they use products like Nexo, and those are like earning products that exist that used to um, sort of like lend these assets off chain. So what we came up with is like, okay, look, so you have a large market, which is large TAM, if you come from traditional venture, and there's not enough products serving this sort of category. So we were like, okay, so we have at least very good engineers that has cross-chain expertise. We can quickly, just like Legos, sort of add up these solutions, and you know, cross-chain infrastructure has improved. We have like now layer zero wormhole and all the other intent networks. Now they're very sophisticated now, so it is time to kind of like almost piece everything up and build a product that looks like a centralized exchange slash like a Revolut product in the front end, and you can come in with your XRP just with one click, put your XRP in, and earn yield. And at the background, we take it to DeFi, or we take it to something like Ethena does, like a basis trade that, you know, because you're long the asset, you can short the asset on the perps. And generate yield. So that's kind of the story. It was coming from looking at top 5 or top 10 assets and really deep diving in and seeing like where skills fit, and yeah, that's our team has a very strong sort of protocol design and cross-chain infrastructure expertise, so we decided to go with that.
You know, it's a key insight that I've heard others talk about. You know, but they talk about it kind of loosely. What I think you have done, and you shared this in your December 11th tweet. You shared a table that showed kind of the top 5 underutilized assets,
Mhm.
and you use a metric called a DeFi utilization rate. So,
Correct.
which I believe is what's the numerator and denominator on that?
Yeah, so numerator would be TVL, and then denominator would be the market cap of the, let's say FDV for those assets, right?
Got it.
Because
So
actually,
in
Bitcoin is still not fully diluted.
yeah, so the example you shared with Doge, TVL is 8.31 million, and then
Yeah,
but the market cap is 58 billion. And
yeah,
so the utilization rate of that is DeFi utilization rate 0.03%, which
yeah,
is an indication that there's hardly any products serving that specific category,
correct,
the Doge market. And that's a really great
correct.
insight. And you've
Mhm.
quantified it. which I don't think others have done that I've seen, but people have talked
Mhm.
about it, you know.
Mhm.
And so you come up with this key insight. Okay, so there's these assets that don't have a lot of products serving them. They don't participate in DeFi. Then what?
Yeah, so then the idea, I mean, the reason why those assets don't have any native yield is because, like, look, like Bitcoin started as a non-smart contract chain, and XRP had heard of smart contract chains at the time. Actually, Vitalik interned at Ripple
Yeah,
before starting Ethereum, and David Schwartz talks about it as the CEO, CTO of Ripple Labs. They make a conscious decision. Look, we're not going to get into this smart contract stuff. It's pretty complicated. We're just going to do payment network and just going to do fees. And Doge is actually just a fork of Bitcoin, right? It is an asset. Like is a blockchain that can't do smart contract logic. So this is the reason why, like, I guess the DeFi hasn't improved. And the other insight that's quite interesting, there has been wrap Bitcoin. There has been wrapping of these assets. Like there's even, it's kind of funny. Tezos is an old project, and there's like 700 million wrapped Tezos exists somewhere. I think they have an L2 that they just wrapped it. But the bad part is, like, it's very hard for people to go in and use these bridges. Like if you're an XRP holder, you maybe used an exchange, you bought your XRP, but then you're just like, and same with Bitcoin too, but you don't want to deal with, like, okay, I'm going to go to bridge front end. I'm going to connect let's say, a XRP wallet, go bridge it to, let's say, I'm going to give the example of Flare because they had a big announcement on XRP. And then, you go there and then you kind of have to find, you have to understand what restaking is. You have to understand what AMMs are. You have to understand what relending is and all that sort of complicated stuff. And you have to know their front ends and go and deposit there. Like, average user is not going to do that. Like, I think DeFi users, which is like 10,000 users, will do it if there's an end game for them. But that was kind of the insight of, like, okay, so if we're going to serve this market, it needs to be very, very simple. It needs to almost look like Revolut, which is a well-known app in Europe, and people just come in and deposit. And if they really want to learn about it more, how we generate yield, sure, like let them come in and understand. But that's kind of the vision of MoreMarkets, is to make sure that it is almost abstracted. And for all these non-smart contract chains, you should be able to generate yield. Not crazy amount of numbers. Like I think some projects put like 20-25% APY. Like we want to make it a sustainable sort of 4 or 5% yield that comes across from DeFi and sort of some sort of C DeFi sources.
yeah. So how are you doing the? I fully get the make it simple, make it very kind of down to earth, relatable to normal people that
Mm-hmm.
want to earn some level of yield on their idle assets, especially assets that are in the top 10 or top 20 that don't have much opportunity for yield.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a maybe walk me through, like, if I own XRP and then I went to
Mm-hmm.
MoreMarkets, um, did on the back end, how did you have to integrate the XRP chain, or like what does that work look like? And as a consumer with XRP, and I
Mm-hmm.
deposit it to MoreMarkets, like tell
Mm-hmm.
me like what happens then.
Yeah, so the first one, that is correct. So we use this technology called MPC. MPC is just to simplify what it is. It's sort of like certain number of nodes that hold a key share that sign a transaction for you.
Hmm.
So let's say those, like, just like blockchain validators, they come in. They're institutions that hold that buy the stake and validate the chain. Um, NPCs do the same way, where you just give the certain key shares to, let's say Fireblocks, right? Fireblocks actually uses this technology. We use that from Near Protocol because we know how it works. So that can spin up, that can almost like create an XRP account for us, where people can deposit the funds so they can see it on their front end.
So that's
And
that's multi-party computation, and so you share a
correct.
piece of the private key with a couple of different parties.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
But it's your wallet plus an MPC network. So MPC network has, let's say, like for now, 30 nodes. Let's say Altan's institution, Peter's institution, and others come in and do some sort of like cryptographic scheme to sign on the network.
Got it.
Yeah, it's pretty common. Like if you use Fireblocks, like for example, I use it for some of our tokens that we hold. It is a bunch of people coming in and signing. It's a better version of multi-sig in a way.
And
so
it's very institutional kind of focused, and it's a very consumer friendly product, but really built for institutions.
yeah, in the background, it's full on like institutions like Anchorage have their own stuff. Like it's pretty secure, and secures like billions of maybe close to trillions of assets. So what happens is people come in. There's two paths where we can generate yield. Depends on the like. I guess this is the supply side. So you, as a user, you came in, you sign in with your wallet or Google X and any accounts that you can generate. We can just generate accounts for you that you hold in your Gmail, or you just come in with what is called Zaman wallet and XRP, but really can extend to any wallets from any chain. You sign up, you deposit your XRP from exchange or somewhere else that you have, or eventually we'll have like on-ramp, off-ramps that you come in and you buy it directly on the app. You just deposit. That's as simple as that. We don't want to complicate the experience. And on the back end, what we do is there's obviously off-chain yield sources and on-chain yield sources. On-chain is what I call demand centers. Traditionally, they have been Ethereum and Solana, but for the XRP case, for example, Flare has been pushing a lot of work there. So it could be just Flare that has like a restaking protocol or like any lending platform that can pair up with a stable coin, and we can just deposit there and borrow a stable coin and generate yield. Almost like MoreMarkets becomes, if you understand DeFi, it becomes like a curator of that asset. And off-chain it's usually like basis trades. XRP has a pretty large open interest in a lot of different cases. So just by having, let's say, long XRP because we hold XRP, we can short XRP on perp dexes and collect what we call funding rates. So funding rate is a balancing mechanism for perp dexes to make sure that the long positions match the short positions. So there's two paths to kind of generate, but the main goal is like, even if we do the basis trade, we'll tell you how the transparency works, where we hold the keys or like all the account the assets, and exchanges. If you go to Binance today, they're not. If you use their earn product, they don't tell you how the yield is generated.
That's really, really fascinating. And it's such a product, I think, with a very large, with a ton of need, right? I'm curious, as if you've created support for these assets, these idle assets with really, really large market caps, tell us about the community reception, like the XRP community, for example, which is, at least on crypto Twitter, they're rabid, right? There are tons of support for Ripple and XRP. What has their reaction been to the MoreMarkets product and support for the XRP token?
Yeah, it's been great. So we had a lot of waitlist users coming in. Actually, in 48 hours, we had like 30,000 signups when we announced it in March. And the way I guess XRP community works is, it's something different. Like XRP is not the same as ETH, and it's way more passionate. They really believe in the XRP, the asset, versus I think ETH and Bitcoin are very. There's almost like camps within Bitcoin and XRP and ETH that are, they're clashing all the time, and you can see that. XRP is all about, mainstream, and they rave about XRP getting used at a bank, so it's pretty different. So I would say though, for DeFi, I see like almost like 2019 Ethereum, where people have started to understand sort of like what AMMs are, what like lending protocols, but like it is growing there. Like it's not as advanced as like Ethereum, but I can see that it's the next wave, right? Like there's way more protocols coming in now, offering XRP yields, and sort of that's how like people take it. Some people take it almost like, it's your XRP. You should never put it somewhere. It should always stay in your wallet. But some people are like, well, I'm holding this for a while, so why not earn, um, you know, 4 or 5% on it? So that camp is still kind of figuring it out. But overall, I think people start to understand that being XRP used as a collateral means the supply goes down, which can have an impact on the price. So that's how kind of the XRP mindset works.
What about the ADA community? I mean, these are all like really, really active communities,
Mm-hmm.
super big fans of their tokens and the projects, and and they have their own leaders, right? You've got Charles at Cardano.
Mm-hmm.
What's their reception been like?
We haven't done as much marketing for ADA. Like the main focus has been XRP because I think it's
Mm,
like the next biggest asset after Bitcoin. And you can play in Bitcoin too. But Bitcoin, as you said, like there's too many projects, and
yeah.
BTC-Fi has been capped around like 10 to 12 billion. So we saw that as like XRP as the next sort of dark horse to kind of run that after Bitcoin.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, that's been the main kind of focus. The other difference between ADA and Bitcoin, ADA and XRP, ADA has liquid staking. So
mm,
there's like staking and LSDs, and so there's some native yield that people stake and just forget. But XRP doesn't have that.
got
That's
it.
the second biggest asset that doesn't have um, native yield.
Um, I remember, early DeFi, DeFi summer, right? Um, and I remember at the time thinking, um, folks in the Cardano ecosystem and other non-EVM ecosystems looking at, Ethereum people participating in DeFi. I wonder if they're jealous. I
Hmm.
wonder if they feel left out. And now that, MoreMarkets is now serving kind of that need, um, now they have an opportunity to participate, but what might be missing is some education. And so how
Yeah.
are you approaching educating the XRP community on like about DeFi, like the very basics of DeFi, how to participate, all of that stuff?
Yeah, so the way we approached it is like as you said, look, ETH is earning like 4%. I mean, I'm adding like 3 point something, and then restaking yield that you can get, which is kind of like 4.5. Solana gets 7-8%. Like, why not? You can't earn 4 or 5% like the ETH folks, right? So that's kind of, hey, like ETH and Solana has done it, and now it's XRP's time. The other thing it is hard for me, and I'm trying to learn myself, is as an engineer how to make sure that you can explain things more basic. So like what is and what I guess works in the Ripple community is to use examples, right? Like, hey, this is Hidden Node for you. So Hidden Node was a large acquisition that people have done. That's a prime brokerage. What if like more markets can become Hidden Node for you? Um, so those kind of things like work really nicely. And a lot of people like sort of see Ripple, for example, as the kind of the next iteration of banking system. So any sort of parallels you can create and to that people understand and be like, oh, that's interesting. But it is, I can tell you though, it's like it is the difference between sort of ETH and Solana and XRP community is ETH and Sol community always looks for something like a project that they come in and they can farm and then they go to the next, right? They just keep doing this, which is like very um, profitable for people that do this all the time. But the people are more sophisticated, right? They have like more sophisticated ways that they farm protocols, they deploy their capital. Um, XRP doesn't have this, right? Like XRP is very sort of passionate community that only like cares about XRP. So that you should kind of carve that narrative, and it's something I find hard coming from sort of near Ethereum and Solana as a Solana user, right? So yeah.
How do collaborations and partnerships work with, when you support an asset? So right now you guys are focused on supporting XRP.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I imagine you probably have a roadmap, and probably the roadmap follows this table that you shared in your December tweet.
Mm-hmm.
Do you work with the foundations themselves, or is everything just permissionless and you just integrate as you have capacity?
Yeah, you can integrate. So like everything's permissionless. On the tech side, it's pretty easy, and we have a strong team that can spin up stuff. So like for Ripple, for example, we've done everything ourselves. We're pretty fast builders. On the GTM side, so you can think about it in a couple of different ways. Obviously, if the labs or the foundation supports you, that's perfect. Um, Ripple Labs is a large organization. I think they have like 900 to 1,000. So it's a bit different than talking to a foundation that has like 20 people. Um, so the other way is obviously integrating with wallets. Every ecosystem have their own wallets. Like if you go to Bitcoin and XRP, Ripple has like 3, 4 different wallets for the XRP ledger. Um, and the main thing, which is the harder thing to do, but if you can convert, you probably get a lot of traction. Is exchanges. So Uphold, which is an American exchange, has something around like 7 billion XRP worth in dollars that hold in customer accounts. And then you can just go down the list, like Binance. All the other ones have billions of XRP just sitting in wallets. So that's another way to kind of go through. And obviously the institutions that hold XRP. So SBI Holdings have a large, holding in Japan, and they were early investors. You can always find these kind of quote unquote large whales that you can work with and kind of serve their needs. So what I would say is kind of partnerships are always to do either to access the asset directly from the institution, or is to someone, what people call is like B2B2C in traditional startups, is to work with an exchange that already has customers that you can just distribute through there. Yeah, it's quite different than working with like an Ethereum DeFi protocol.
Yeah. Working with exchanges, do you do an integration with the exchange, and then the customer then does whatever they need to do with their XRP and more markets,
Mm-hmm.
or how does that work? Is it white labeled through the exchange?
Yeah, it would be white through the exchange. So people wouldn't come to the MoreMarkets front end, but instead they'll go to, let's say, Binance Wallet.
Mm.
They deploy there. So Lombard has done this after like working on this for a while, but I guess like that's the kind of next wave of like integrations.
Yeah. What do you think about super apps like Infinex and others
Mm-hmm.
like it that are, Infinex just made an announcement yesterday with they're working now with near intents, and they now
Mm-hmm.
support uh, swaps or switches within inside of Infinex for Bitcoin, Doge, and XRP.
Mm-hmm.
I think using near intents. Um, uh, is there potential there for collaboration where Infinex is very kind of customer? They want to be in front of the consumer, but then on the back end, rather than having to build it themselves, like could they
Mm-hmm.
potentially work with more markets?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we know them quite well.
Mm.
Actually, one of the engineers used to work with our CTO at Near. They're pretty close to the Near team, and so as we are, like Ilya has been an angel investor and an advisor for me. Personally, has been a mentor for me. So there is a integration path, but how I would think about this is like Infinex, from what I understand, has been more like focused on trading, right? So a lot of these decentralized DEX, not, I wouldn't say centralized exchange competitors that are fully on chain, have been focused on users trying to trade. Like there's a PerpDex one, which is hyper liquid. There has been Particle Network and I guess Infinex that are doing swaps and in a decentralized and self-custodial manner. What we try to do is earning, right? Fully, eventually, like do XRP and other assets just to earn. That's kind of the front end, but I wouldn't shy away from integrating with any sort of front end that can get us more users in the background, even though that's as long they end up in our vaults, right? So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, no. I The more I think about the crypto space, I mean, it's we speak sometimes in terms of like competition, but the truth is it's there's always a co-opetition integration path. And And I think, if our goal is to grow the ecosystem, to grow the community, to grow the industry,
Yeah.
co-opetition is definitely the better path to go. Um,
Yeah.
and I think with that lens, I'm seeing more and more opportunities, especially with projects that, on the outside might be perceived as competitors. There's always a
Hmm.
path to cooperate in some form or fashion that will
Correct.
grow together. Um,
Hmm.
and I guess I'm just sharing that kind of reflection because as I'm looking at projects and I speak with projects every day, I see them, and we talk about competitors, of course, because that's part of the marketing kind of discussion, right?
Hmm.
I'm seeing more and more co-opetition as an opportunity, and I think we would just be much better off as an industry if we approach it like that, to grow the pie versus trying to eat each other's lunch right now. It's just too
Yeah.
early.
Yeah. We've done this. When I was at Near, Near is an L1 blockchain. We have incorporated, so like we work with, I think it was 2023, that was Polygon Labs, bunch of other L1s that we wanted to collaborate with. And one of the reasons why, I guess, like going back to my Near story, the reason why we pulled out DA at the time was like, look, like there's this L2 rush coming in. How do we position Near to be more collaborative to what's going on rather than competitive? So we pull that in like a month at the time and be like, look, this is something that you can use Near Tech for, and benefit you guys from, just if you want a cheaper alternative to Ethereum DA. So I think this is becoming more common. And Infinex has actually been kind of driving that pretty nicely, with a bunch of assets that they add.
Yeah. Let's shift to a Medium article you wrote recently.
Mm-hmm.
That's I think probably not controversial, but at least the headline seems controversial, and would love
Mm-hmm.
your take on it, because I think it has influence in how you've built more markets, or maybe how you
Mm-hmm.
view markets in general. You
Mm-hmm.
said crypto isn't modular anymore; it's vertical,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's kind of the antithesis to the modular kind of narrative that Nick White and others are pushing. Tell us what you mean by that, and how has that kind of influenced how you're building more markets?
Yeah, I mean, this was my thinking around, sort of. There's ways to think about this differently. I think people like modularity because it ended up with a lot of, quote unquote specialized layers that can do certain things, like DA and others. But when you look at them and look at their multiples and how they performed in the market, they didn't end up in the way that people expected. And there's tons of projects that launch as L2s, and DA projects. They specifically serve one part of the stack, but it started to, and this is maybe controversial too, when you look at the successful projects of this cycle, they all are vertical. And by what I mean is, you look at Hyperliquid, which is a perp dex. It could have launched in a blockchain. It could have worked on a different ecosystem, but they have, after building the perp dex, they started owning everything else, right? So they own the blockchain. They own even, now they're building an ecosystem, but they first started to build an app that goes underneath and try to control sort of all of the stack to make sure that the perp dex is very good. And when you look at Athena, it's kind of a similar play where they've started with a application. They take assets and they run a basis trade and they give the yield back. And they started to sort of build now. Hey, now that we have the stable coin and we have all these products, let's maybe think about a blockchain where we can actually use USDE as a margin, or like as the unit of account. And they also said they're building a perp dex, so a perp dex that can use USDE. So you start to see this kind of shift in how people think about product. And this is not something new, right? Like when you look at Apple, Apple is actually a very good example of vertical integration. They have a phone and they basically have the app store. You integrate. Obviously, they are a platform like Hyperliquid. They can launch apps and stuff, but Apple is the first thing that you see. And this is something that happens with Microsoft, all the other sort of successful companies from the last year has that, right? But yeah, it's kind of been an observation that how successful projects this cycle has been. I mean, whether there's a cycle or not, that's a different conversation. But lately, I've been seeing a lot more products that build a product and then starts to own down the stack.
Yeah. I think that design choice, it's really a design choice, right? And every design choice has trade-offs. And I've spoken with and have been involved in a lot of Ethereum layer 2 projects.
Mm-hmm.
And I, you know, from the outside, it's really as if they were all, in support of Ethereum. But
Mm-hmm.
once you're kind of on the inside, it's pretty clear that each of these layer 2s don't really care about Ethereum. They care about their
Mm-hmm.
own chain. They
Yeah.
care about growing you know, their they care about growing their own ecosystem, their own users, their own applications on their own chain. And so Ethereum almost takes a back seat because
Mm-hmm.
now they're viewing kind of the thing that they're building. They're becoming business owners and
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs. Um, and that's kind of what you want, right? Like if they're going to be building something and they're going to use Ethereum as, building a layer 2, and then Ethereum is kind of like on the back end. You want them to be focused on growing their user base, their
Yeah.
applications. Like that's actually the right thing. But the negative thing is Ethereum kind of loses out on some of that, some of that value. Um, and so
Correct.
that's kind of the horizontal approach, I guess. Now what some have termed as, monolithic, or the vertical approach is you're right. You're exactly right. Apple is like a clear kind of archetype of that. And the trade-off there is you have full control over the user experience, which is
Mm-hmm.
what actually users want. Like
Yeah.
users want convenience, they want ease, they want, safety, they want all of that, right? Like most
Mm-hmm.
people just want to kind of do things. They want to do their thing. They have a job that needs to get done, and then they want to move on with life. And it's like a hassle-free experience, and there's a very large market for that. And for some reason in crypto, we've kind of went the other way, where we embraced complexity, we embraced jargon, we embraced every piece of hassle and
Yeah.
annoyance as like something cool for some reason. And I'm really glad that we're going the other way now and realizing that none of this is good for growth. Like all of
Mm-hmm.
this it's actually, friction is like bad for growth. And for some reason we've embraced friction. And so
Yeah.
I'm pleased to hear everything you're saying.
Yeah, we used to do it more as an industry. I think it's become less, right? Like if you were into 2020, 2021 time, like people talked about consensus algorithms, people compared consensus algorithms. This is a better consensus algorithm than that, you know, and when you look at crypto founders, especially like the blockchain founders, they all have some sort of academic degree, right? Like even this cycle is one of the most important, probably most high projects. Eigenlayer's founder Shiram is his professor, right? So like this is the reason why kind of like people like complexity, because if you're a professor, this is what your art is, right? Your art is to create very complex structures and systems that can work on its own. Um, but I think that's changing, and you can see that with quote unquote market performance, right? Like the market performance. Market tells you that like Hyperliquid or an Ethena that has users and also has sort of distribution could do better. And this is also a good example, but exchanges are still the most profitable businesses in crypto, and they all own the user, and they all have their L1 or L2 in some form or shape. And one comment, Peter, you said, which is very important for Ethereum. Ethereum decided to go horizontal, and they decided not to build their own L2 to scale the system, right? And then they ended up hurting Ethereum in many ways. And now they're like, let's just go back to the L1. Let's just solve the L1 issue. So it is kind of like this testing period of, let's go horizontal. Well, horizontal doesn't work. Let's go back and try to fix the L1 to make sure people come to the L1 to use the L1, which is interesting.
Yeah. And I think, we many of us in crypto, we speak in abstract terms, but once you are involved in a project and you feel the pain of liquidity fragmentation, then you realize, like all of these L2s all over the place, maybe that wasn't such a good thing. And like, but you don't arrive at that conclusion until you actually feel the pain.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot to be said for research and white papers and everything. But once you actually feel the pain as a user, then you realize, wow, that was a really bad experience.
Yeah.
And then it really helps to, I think, inform. And I think we just need more users using their own products versus talking about their products.
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, as we close here, tell us, I guess, what's next for MoreMarkets, and how folks can get involved. I know there's a wait list on the website for those that are interested to get early access. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, so we just did our sort of new branding. We just changed the colors a little bit to look a bit more orangish, which is nice. We've been liking that. We are going to sort of revamp the website actually on the 12th, so it's tomorrow. Because we're recording on the 11th. And then we are launching the product on July 2nd. So we'll have like customer deposits open. People can come in and join MoreMarkets and then start earning directly on the app. So that's the next milestone. We're working as a team to deploy, the protocol on a bunch of different chains, and make sure we're going through audits. We've done 2 audits, adding 3 more, and really just launching the product on July 2nd, making sure that people that actually signed up to be a waitlist user, they now become users of MoreMarkets. So that's where we're focused on. The team is pretty excited about it.
Are you going to have a cap for each user as they deposit XRP deposits, or how are you, I guess, throttling the participation at first?
Yeah, we'll probably cap it at a certain low number. I haven't decided what that would be yet, because we have some interest from obviously institutional clients that want to put XRP in, and then just wanted to see kind of how much retail demand we can get and kind of mix those up and get a cap. Yeah.
Got it. Well, Altan, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. You guys are serving a clear need in the market, and I love highlighting projects that do that versus another Me Too type project. So thank you for taking the time, and I'll be sure to put all of the URLs in the show notes so that people can learn more and participate and be part of the community.
Thanks, Peter.